Welcome to Pitch the Press. Today, we're going to hear from 4 startups, and they're going to be presenting to 4 of the leading business reporters in the world. Joining me on the stage are Frederic Lardinois from TechCrunch, Rina Raphael from The Fast Company, Becky Peterson from Business Insider, and Marianne Russin, the other way around, Marianne Russin from the BBC, and Becky Peterson from Business Insider. Let's give them a round of applause. During today's panel, what we're going to be hearing is what journalists look for when companies are pitching to them, what makes them choose a story, what makes them ignore a story, how you can get your company into the news feed of journalists like this, and through them reach millions of people around the world. We're going to kick straight off with our first company, and joining us on stage now is Adam Kaplan from EduBees. Adam. Adam, you have 4 minutes.
No pressure.
Can we shut the door, please?
Testing? Okay, great. I'll let them shut the door. Hi, my name is Adam Kaplan. I'm CEO and co-founder of EduBees. You may have seen me this morning at the plenary. Our company, we focus on the visualization of data over full motion video. Everybody's saying, what does that mean? So the company, the first ever use of our technology was during Hurricane Irma, in which we were able to take data and, for example, show the street names over the flooded streets to allow first responders to understand what they were looking at. We took the data feeds of the incident response, where they were getting the areas where they were finding out where they could find the people that were trapped inside the buildings. They used our technology to take this data and these visualizations and to help people that were in these visual scenarios. Additionally, we've been working with first responders in the Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Michael, as well as during the California wildfires, where our technology was implemented. Since this time, the company has progressed, and we're working with a number of other areas, such as the defense, as well as in the sports arenas. So the technology was also, in a much different way, is being used to get the data feeds of golf balls, and it's being used now in the PGA Tour to show the trajectory of a golf ball and how it lands. And that's being done off of the Goodyear blimp or on drones. So we're growing very fast and taking data. Today, we live in a world where you have tons and tons of data. You have tons of video feeds from body cameras. You have videos coming off of your phone, from drones, from blimps. So we take the world of data, take the world of video, and we put that all together. So once again, I'm Adam Kaplan. One quick note about my CTO, who I want to give you a little bit of, he's the smart guy that put all this technology together. He came from Amazon, where he was there for about 6 years. And he worked on the initial Amazon Prime Air drone, the delivery drone, as well as wrote the first code for the Alexa and led the development of the Amazon Fire TV. So he's the smart guy, but that's a little bit about us. Thank you.
Okay. So let's start. Becky, if you'd like to, first of all, just quickly tell us what kind of news do you generally cover? And would you have picked up that story?
So I mostly cover financial news, M&A, IPO, some funding if it's a really big round, but I also have a background in enterprise tech. I probably wouldn't cover it, but I did think it was a good pitch. And I have some comments. Can I share now?
Okay, yeah, sure.
The Amazon CTO element is really good, and that's definitely something that my colleagues would have picked up on. We tend to really like to emphasize when someone comes from a big company like that, just to show that the founders have experience. But I'm left with one big question, which is who's backing you? How much money have you raised? Are institutions investing in you, and do they believe in your product?
Okay, you want answers or for that?
Yeah, sure.
So yes, we are indeed back, besides our crowd, with a number of corporates such as Verizon, Motorola, as well as 8VC, which were the founders of Palantir. So based out of Silicon Valley, a couple $1 billion fund, as well as Aspect Ventures. So we have Silicon Valley money, we have corporate money. We did our initial seed round of $5 million about a year ago, and we're growing pretty quickly. So we have some pretty good backers behind us.
So Becky, if those details had been in the pitch, would you have paid more attention to it?
You know, to be honest, if a number is not near 100 million, it's very hard for us to cover, which, I mean, that's a very high bar. I realize that.
Okay. Marianne.
So I cover technology and business for BBC News Online. My background is basically in covering technology. I specialize in about 13 different topics of technology, ranging from 3D printing and drones to cybersecurity to artificial intelligence. Basically, I'm a massive tech nerd, and my brand is I'm the break it down girl. I'm trying to break down and explain what these solutions are and make our general public be a smarter consumer. So for me, I would say that I wouldn't want to know anything about your seed funding or anything about that. I want to know how the solution worked, and I want to really know how it worked. Exactly what the drone was doing. And I'd also want to have analogies that the general public would find interesting. So I'd need more analogies beyond the PGA tournament. That's a cool thing, but that's cool for people who like golf. What about everybody else, a lot of whom would not like golf? What would they want to see that used for? Would you use it for, something that the general public can really understand and get behind? So at the BBC, we're trying to make sure that everything is really understandable, and we're trying to reach the widest number of eyeballs on the internet or on the TV, right? So I want to know, could you use this for disaster response? What could it do? Can you solve a problem? Rather than creating a solution where there is no problem, we have so many problems in the world, could you try and fix one of them?
Okay. Rena.
Hi there, I'm Rena Raphael from Fast Company Magazine, and I cover a bunch of topics for Fast Company, but mostly specialize in biotech, digital health, wellness, and social issues. Your company is definitely something Fast Company would write about, and in fact we have. So you're already ahead of the game with us. I would just say about your pitch, it had a lot of good information, but I would have led with impact and maybe made it a little stronger in the sense of we are a company that can help first responders do their job 50% better.
Okay.
And then maybe also bring it to relevant. There are more natural disasters than ever before. And back it up with some information you have. We found through our technology that first responders can help a site out 30% faster, or save off 10 minutes, and that can save lives. Really bring home how this helps first responders. And I would also push up the information that you guys have been doing test runs in places such as California with the wildfires, and just sort of emphasize that counties and states are already depending on this and that it's going to spread.
Yeah, that's a great point. So in this morning session, for example, we had the drone pilot who said, I have saved 15 lives, and using this technology, taking tangible numbers. That's what I hear. I think that's a great point.
Okay. Frederick, I'm not going to ask you to introduce yourself. That'll come in the next round because we're running out of time. Just tell us what you thought of the pitch.
I've written about you, but based on the pitch, I wouldn't have written about you, and for the very simple reason that I need a hook, a news hook, that may be funding, even if it's under 100 million. Mm-hmm. I've written about 500,000, as long as the company is interesting, but I need a hook, or maybe a new product release or something like that. So that's why, based on the pitch, maybe I would have taken a meeting just to see what you're up to. But I wouldn't have written about you.
Okay, Adam, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I just want to ask Frederick, how many pitches do you get each day, and how much time can you allocate to each one?
I don't want to know. So I wake up to, personally, we have a tips line, obviously, that there's hundreds of pitches every day. Personally, probably 40 to 50, I would say. And I can allocate between writing and reading those, an hour to those, just to get through those,
Okay, so it's about a couple of minutes each one, maybe,
at best.
at best. Okay, so people have to grab your attention
Yeah,
with that email subject line.
We're not talking minutes, we're talking the email subject for the most part.
Right, so the most important thing is the email subject line. That's got to grab your attention.
That will make me open the email. And it has to come directly to me,
Right.
not to the general line, because chances are I'll just get missed if it goes into that general line.
Okay, let's hear from our next company. And coming up now with a company called Medaware is Jordan Feder. So please welcome him to the stage. Jordan, you have 4 minutes to convince our panel to cover your story.
Okay, I'll do my best. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So I lead business development at Medaware, and we develop machine learning-enabled decision support tools that are looking to assist all stakeholders across the continuum of healthcare. The first application of our technology uses machine learning algorithms and big data analytics to identify dangerous medication errors at the point of care, evolving adverse drug events and other medication-related risks, such as opioid dependency, which is obviously something that is destroying communities around the US right now. And kind of right now, our safety platform is deployed across 40% of the Israeli healthcare population in Israel, covering 40% of the lives here. And we're now deploying in our first few marquee US healthcare institutions and are literally stopping hundreds of potentially dangerous and sometimes catastrophic medication errors and adverse events every single day. And given how the opioid epidemic has continued and has created this real public health crisis in the US and continues to destroy individuals, families, and communities really all over, Medaware decided that we had to basically use our expertise and act and do something. And just to paint the picture, the crisis in the US in aggregate societal costs is more than $78 billion in cost, claims last year 47,000 lives in the US in terms of overdose. There's 1,000 daily emergency room visits as a result of opioid abuse, and 1 in 4 non-cancer patients that are on long-term opioid now for treatment are suffering with addiction. This is a big problem. Now, I'd like to tell you a quick story about a gentleman named Corey, your typical teenager, upstate New York, was an athlete in high school, liked all kinds of things, fun, parties, etc., was a little bit of a thrill seeker. He had an incident involving a snowboard and a trampoline that resulted, unfortunately, in a fracture and a break and 23 screws and 2 plates and all kinds of stuff. And in typical fashion, what he was prescribed were prescription opioids in order to manage his intense pain. And little by little, he became hooked. And really within months and probably days, he was hooked on opioids. And eventually, a few months or a few years later, after multiple rehab treatments and attempts, et cetera, he died of an overdose. And it's obviously a tragic story. This is a young kid in his prime, et cetera, died of an overdose, but he's just one of 130 Americans every single day that are dying like that. And so basically, what we're talking about here is, opioids and the idea of opioids in particular are obviously important medications, and they serve a lot of good and help patients and help manage pain. But the overprescribing and misprescribing of prescription opioids has led to one of the most deadly epidemics in US history and a true public health crisis. And we believe at Medaware that the early identification of patients at risk of becoming dependent is a key component to battling the epidemic. And we're joining now other technologists and governments, initiatives, and other folks in this space in the battle. And currently, right now, we're testing this solution at Harvard Medical School, and with really unprecedented accuracy and great results, our AI-enabled platform is alerting prescribers at the point of care in terms of patient-specific risk of dependency and allowing them to intervene before it's too late. And right now we believe this is a real moral imperative. And yes, we are in Jerusalem. So I'd like to quote kind of a famous Jewish tale or a famous Jewish parable in Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the father. And what they said was, it's not incumbent upon you to finish the task, but neither are we free to desist from it altogether. And we're not naive to think that we're going to solve the opioid crisis, but we're certainly going to do our job to combat it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Marianne. Would the BBC have picked up that pitch?
I do like the urgency of the crisis, The thing, though, that I find with medical care stories, particularly ones whereby with the BBC we have a focus that even though we are international, especially stories that are written for BBC News Online, they have to have a primary focus where they would have at least some interest to a UK audience before having a secondary audience that is the rest of the world. And obviously we have a very complicated system in our country whereby we have free healthcare, but our healthcare system is crippled no matter how much taxes we pay. So my big thing I want to know that was left out of your pitch is how much would this cost? And is it even going to be likely? Like, for example, in America it's different, so because you're on health insurance, you know, it might be a different system whereby they could afford it, but our NHS is really struggling at the moment. So I'd want to know that.
Okay, Rena.
So this is something that Fast Company would definitely write about because it has huge industry impact. But I would not have picked it up if what you said came to me in email format. It took you about 30 seconds, which I guess is about a paragraph or two, for you to get to the meat of the matter. We drastically cut down on prescription error. That should have been line one. Those amazing facts you have and stats should have been moved way up. Give me some numbers. 4% of the industry miscalculates or gives wrong prescriptions. The elderly sometimes are being given Viagra, and babies are being, something like of that sort. I like that you tried to give it some personal attention by giving the story of the boy. I will say, for an American audience, we've heard so many opioid stories that I don't really know if that landed. I would have given more stats on how many people are affected by this. I love that you're working with Harvard Medical School. Tell me some stats from them. How have they been doing? Harvard Medical himself, how much have they seen is being miscalculated? I think I would have moved a lot of that up to show how wide-ranging this could be.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Frederick, I didn't give you the chance before to tell us what you do, so briefly tell us about your average day and what you cover, and would you have picked up that pitch?
On my average day, I sit at my desk and take phone calls. So I write about a lot of B2B, enterprise, developer tools, a lot of the more technical topics, cloud computing, AI. And that would drive me absolutely nuts if I had to do that all day. So I write about consumer, Google, Microsoft, Adobe products, all kinds of other things as well.
Okay. Would you have picked up that pitch?
No, because there was no news hook, so you already know that. But I think you did a really good job in stating the problem. I didn't get a good idea of what you actually do to solve it. I think that was my main problem. So I would have read it and maybe asked you to tell me more about it, but based on the story, based on the pitch, it would have been a story.
So you mean a deeper description of the kind of the outlier detection technology?
Exactly.
Like how
What is, because I like the kind of the nitty-gritty technical
Okay.
side of things.
Yeah,
there.
no, and noted. And we got the cool stuff there too, so for sure. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Becky, in some ways that pitch kind of had a lot of stuff going on. They had the human element, had the medical element, it had the scientific element, but did the format of the pitch work for you? Would you have read the first few sentences and taken it, gone on, or would you have given up?
I did sort of feel like it was out of order in a way, and I would agree with what my fellow panelists said about the boy not really landing. I wasn't really interested in him. And I also felt myself wondering the entire time what the technology was, like how is someone interacting with it, which is not always the most interesting thing to put in a pitch, but it was distracting to me that I didn't have the answer while going through like you explaining the market and why it's important.
How important is the human element in something that you're looking at, or are you only focusing on the numbers and the business?
We definitely want to know who's running the business. So I don't think customers are always the most interesting, or even the people being impacted by it are not always as interesting to us as the people who have built the technology, or again the people who have invested and the people who are sort of backing and supporting you as a business.
Okay, Jordan, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, well, our next company up is called Skytran, and here to present them is their CEO, John Cole. You have 4 minutes.
All right. Hello, I'm John Cole, CEO of Skytran. Skytran is focused on solving the #1 local problem on the planet, which is urban traffic congestion. And it does this by doing something that autonomous vehicles and all forms of public transit cannot do. It does it by doing what cars do, but much, much better. And it does this by moving people in automated, high-speed vehicles through networks on dedicated guideways, nonstop, point-to-point at very high speed, using special proprietary magnetic levitation technology. The key is to make it very inexpensive. Inexpensive means 1/10 the cost of light rail, 1/100th the cost of a subway, so that it can be privately financed. We've raised about $20 million so far. I think the key thing is our backers. Our backers are Tim Draper, Adam Newman, Eric Schmidt, and to cap it off, we just brought on Reliance. This is Mukesh Ambani's favorite project right now. So we have 4 billionaire backers and one very, very large industrial company that's committed to roll this out across India on a massive scale. Let me just say it will be the largest infrastructure project on the planet when they do this.
Okay. Fine, and you have 2 minutes 30 seconds left. So thank you very much
All right.
for keeping to the time, Rena.
This is definitely something Fast Company would write about. I will say that this pitch would not have grabbed me right away, just because I would have given a little more illustration about how it will affect people. I would have started with something along the lines of, I believe, as you said earlier, not in this pitch, but the only way to get around traffic is to get above it. And then I would have illustrated exactly how that happens. Imagine a pod that is connected to your home that will take you anywhere to go. I felt like you used some words that didn't really illustrate what it exactly looks like to people. I know you're writing this in email, you're obviously going to show an image, but if you were just pitching it person to person, it's a little hard to grasp what it is. Right. I also would have included a lot of the stats that you have on how much money this will save the average person, how much this will cut down on traffic. The average person will get to work 10 minutes faster. I think you really needed to drive the point home of how this really will help cities and the individual person.
Frederick.
I write about mobility quite a bit too, because I write about everything. So I would have been definitely interested in that. I share your concerns about the pitch and that it wasn't quite clear. Now you have an unfair advantage because we all saw your prototype yesterday, so just so everybody knows. So we know what it looks like, but based on the pitch, I wouldn't really have had a real idea what I'm looking at. I'm kind of a pod hanging underneath a monorail kind of thing. So explaining that would have been really useful. And then starting with the fact that you've got a backer in India that will deploy this would have been a good hook for a story. So that's what I would have put that on the top, not at the bottom. That's what I would say about that.
Okay. Becky.
So I think Business Insider would cover this, though it would probably not be me. And I know that you heard my notes from the other presenters, but it would be Eric Schmidt is backing this futuristic-looking technology that could replace subways in the future, something like that. That's what our headline would be. And so knowing that you could provide those elements up front so we would catch it. We don't necessarily want a pitch that's formulated like a Business Insider article, but we want to have the details catch our eye so we know that the framing is there. So you did a good job in that respect.
Marianne, futuristic technology, solving the world's traffic jams.
All right, let me tell you a story. I've actually covered SkyTran. I covered them in 2014. I saw SkyTran in, I think it was a Jerusalem Post article. It looked cool, it looked very interesting, and it had the keywords in the article that it was talking about magnetic levitation. It was comparing it to Hyperloop. This got me really excited. This was a new, really futuristic technology. A lot of what I do is I want the whole consumer public to understand this. I want business people to make decisions. I want tech nerds to get excited. And I want actual industry people who read stuff for fun to get excited as well. So I then took that story from Jerusalem Post and I wrote a story for the International Business Times at the time, and it went viral and was one of my biggest hits for the month, and was really mentioned by the managing editor because it went mental. And the reason why it went mental was because people love the fact Hyperloop, Elon Musk, all these real keywords, magnetic levitation. So for me, what was you had the information there. I would have just rearranged it. The top line to me would have been magnetic levitation. We're doing, people keep talking about Hyperloop. There is no Hyperloop. We're actually doing it here in Israel. We've got the test track at IAI. We're doing all this stuff. We actually have it. It is coming soon. It is actually coming soon, and we have the stuff to back it up. And when we say proprietary magnetic levitation, explain what that means, even if it's just a couple of lines in the physics, but explain that. Because if you want an actual, so maybe there's a different mix of journalists here, but if you want a real technology journalist to get excited, you need to remember that we want to know about the technology, but also we want to know about stuff that our readers want to know about. And obviously it's a bit different with Elon Musk now. He's in trouble with the SEC. A lot of people don't like him anymore. But as you can see, public opinion of Elon Musk and everything to do with the technologies he's interested in, that has skyrocketed over the last 5 years. So we want to write about the stuff our viewers want to read, you see. So I would have basically just called you guys up or emailed back and said, give me more info. How's the maglev work? Does it really work? But I would cover it. I'd just say maybe rearrange it and remember what a tech person would like to know and try and frame that sometimes in the way that you also do your pitches.
Let me ask you, Rena, how important do you think it is for companies to address their pitches personally to the specific interests of the journalists they're trying to reach? And how much can they just send out a general PR blast and hope that somebody picks it up?
I think a well-written and a well-done pitch will land with most journalists. So I don't necessarily need it to be formulated to me. I kind of feel like it's a well-written book. It'll appeal to most people. So I don't think they have to research much. And a lot of times people do send me things that aren't a good fit for me, but I'll forward them to someone else in my company. But in general, I think everyone here would agree. We'd appreciate having more pitches that, are relevant to our beats. But I think you just need to think of what is interesting, what is going to make a good headline, what is newsy here. Too often I get pitches on companies that have already been profiled by many other companies. I'm not going to write about it. Do you have a news hook? Do you have a different angle? Do you have something else that is specifically relevant to my publication? If not, I'm just going to ignore it, and I'll probably maybe ignore the next email you send me. I think sometimes people don't understand that the more they send me things that I'm not interested in, the more I'm going to regard them less in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. And our final company up on stage is NSL.com, and here to present is Raz Tamir. Thank you. Please join us. Okay, you have 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Raz. I'm the CEO of NSL.com. In 2 months, we are launching our first satellites to space. This satellite will change how satellite communication will be done and is done today. Today, there are 4 billion people that are not connected in developing countries mainly, but when you fly, when you're at sea, you're not connected as well. So it's not just a problem of the developing countries. I have a friend, he lives in Chicago. His name is Eli. He drives from Chicago to Detroit. It's a 300 miles drive. 2 weeks ago, he was driving the I-94. It's the polar frost. The Waze tells him to deviate. There's some obstacle on the road. He deviates. After 10 minutes, his engine stops. He's out of cellular coverage because the highways are covered. After that, below that, you're not covered by any cellular network. And now he is inside the car. It's minus 40 degrees outside. How long can he survive? So after half an hour, another car stopped there and rescued him. But it's not only a problem of the developing world. It's the US, seas, air, everything needs a better connection. Now, we have the technology. Satellites can connect everywhere, but satellites are too expensive. A communication satellite is basically a communication dish in space. You want more communication, you need a larger dish. So most of the satellite is actually taking the dish to space. We're changing this. We're growing the satellites in space. We're launching small satellites, and as they reach space, they grow. So we're able to build miniature satellites at 1/10 of the cost, launch them to space, launch 30 satellites in a single launcher instead of 4 satellites today because, again, they're miniature, thus saving, again, 90% of the cost of launch. And when we are in space, then we can deploy a large antenna and we can act like we were 200 times more or bigger satellite. Thus, eventually, the cost of communication is a factor of the cost of the satellite divided by the amount of throughput I can sell. So if I have a miniature satellite, miniature cost, and a lot of throughput, the cost drops down. So we can take the satellite communication cost by an order of magnitude lower. It means that we can compete head-to-head with fiber, with 5G. So we have all the advantages of fiber and 5G, namely low cost and high reliability and throughput, without the obstacles, without the downside. Namely, we are mobile, we are flexible. Let's say you have a Mondial, you want to cover it for a month, and then you do not need connectivity there anymore. So you do not pave fiber there. You have to use satellites. So by bringing the satellite communication down to a level of a fiber or a cellular, we're able to change how satellite communication or communication is done and make it as affordable so everyone can choose whether he wants to be connected or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I should say, before we go to the responses, that what we've asked the companies here to do here today is almost impossible. Tell the entire story of their company in 4 minutes, and I think they've all done an amazing job. They really have. So let's kick off with you, Frederick. Good story?
Good story is probably, for me, the pitch that would have hooked me immediately. Because you started with, you're launching within 2 months, so you got a news hook there. I'm not sure the story about your friend in Chicago added much to it, to be honest, but that's personal, because we all know there's...
I won't tell him.
No, but tell him I'm really happy he survived.
Okay.
It's just, you already stated what the problem was. I didn't know that was necessary. It leaves me with some questions about your business plan. Are you working with telecom companies? Are you offering your own service? Questions like that. But that's good because I would follow up and ask you about that. So to me, that was probably the best pitch of the day.
Thank you.
Becky?
Yeah, the rocket thing was good. The friend thing was less good. I was also really captured by the idea of a small satellite becoming big in space. That was just, it was weird to me, and I don't cover space tech, so maybe someone on that beat would understand it better, but that was definitely captivating. I am wondering, what's the business? Who are you selling to? What's the game plan? But I think you had some of the action items up front, so that was interesting. And then if I didn't quite understand until the end exactly what the satellites were trying to do. So the 5G and fiber thing might be better higher up.
Okay, thank you.
You're beginning to get a sense of this. There's all these cynical journalists. They've heard all the technology. They've heard all the stories, but they get really excited by rockets and magnetic levitation. Okay? You heard that. I write about tax most of the time. And it's really weird that my editors get really excited when it's either a supermodel or Uri Geller in the headline, even though they're really serious people who only care about tax. Marianne, would you have picked that up?
I am the complete opposite. You have hit on, this is not to say your solution personally, but you have hit on an actual problem that I experience on a weekly basis. So I have been covering nanosats for several years, and I cover everything to do with any kind of wireless signal, so that's a very wide range as well. So basically, the problem with your pitch, so essentially to someone who's come to it new, it's fine, right? It sounds really exciting. The problem is that I was already told about this technology 5 years ago and already covered it from the very first companies who were doing it. So I need to know, and this is an actual problem I have. People throw me nanosat emails and I just go, well, that just sounds like the last 4 companies I interviewed over the last 5 years. So this is my problem, is that everybody's trying to do nanosats. But what is different about your company doing nanosats? So this is a really big thing, or for all of your entrepreneurs as well as for PR people. You must know your competition. You must already have prepared what is different between your competition and that, and then make sure that your representation are putting that out there, or that's a very quick answer you have to hand for a journalist. What's different? The other issue I have with it is basically, this is just an improvement for pitching in future, would be to basically stress the very important thing about this is the immense cost of taking a satellite into space and how it is an industry that very few people can afford. And the whole point of the nanosat is that it allows smaller businesses to run applications and do really cool things in space using your nanosats. And that's why you want to do that. Unless, of course, your nanosats are on a SpaceX rocket that explodes, which has actually happened to some of my interviewees. I would say that it's very important to make it clear to the general public. Always remember that I think we live in a bubble whereby we're used as tech people to talking to each other. We have to somehow bridge the divide and convey it to someone who doesn't know anything you do. So with all of my interviewees, I say, how would you explain this to your auntie? And I go from there, and then use that as a way, and then that might help you with more journalists across the spectrum.
Raz, let me ask you, can you answer that point?
Of course.
What's different about your thing that it's going to do what the others said they would do and they haven't succeeded?
So OneWeb is launching a constellation of small satellites. They require $10 billion in order to cover the Earth. We require less than $200 million to do that.
Great. If I saw that in a press release and more stuff about that, yes, it would definitely make me think more about it.
Okay. Rena, would you have read on to the end of that pitch?
I probably wouldn't have, but I would have moved some things up. For example, one thing that really caught my attention is when he said it was 1/10 of the cost. Yep. I would have emphasized the fact that this is smaller, flexible, more affordable technology that's going to revolutionize certain things that impact everyone, including people who go on flights and flight connectivity. So I think you had the information there, but it was a little long-winded, and I think I echo my fellow journalists when I say the story of the friend didn't really land with me. But I would have brought it more back into the financial impact of this on the industry.
Okay, Raz, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we just have a few minutes left. I just want to go down the panel and ask them if you can think of the worst and the best pitch that you ever had.
I really hate most pitches, just to be honest. And I really hate follow-up emails. I wanted to say that in case anyone was planning on sending an email and then sending a second and third email. I think the best pitches are when somebody that I have a relationship with, like a PR person or an executive, reaches out to me and sort of gives me a note to say, hey, we have this, like, cover it if you want to, or even to sort of give a more casual thing. And not everyone has access, not everyone has those relationships that they can rely on, but that's what I appreciate the most, when it's sort of like an intimate connection. Worst pitches you'll probably see all over my Twitter feed. I think the last one I posted was an app that scans your feet to give personalized soles, like shoe things. And it was a bad pitch because that's not something I would ever cover. It has nothing to do with any of my other coverage. And it's clear that the person who emailed me doesn't know who I am or what I do and is just filling up my inbox, which feels like an insult to me.
Marianne.
So I don't mind emails at all, but I will tell you about my worst pitch, and it's echoing what Becky said. It's about literally not knowing who I am. The worst pitch I ever received was from a very persistent lady who kept saying, "Hi, Mark," blah, 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 blah. I didn't even work with any Marks. So, that was... So what are you doing? Anyway, she was actually so persistent as to send follow-up emails. We got to the third follow-up email where eventually I stopped ignoring it and said, I don't know, maybe I haven't replied because my name isn't Mark. And then, so instead of apologizing and then having a go and actually explaining the solution to me and apologizing, just never heard from her ever again. So, that would say that's the worst pitch. But yes, very much know who you're pitching to. So I'm clearly, if you guys have maybe got a kind of an inkling, I'm a tech person. I'm a tech journalist, right? I don't care about your seed funding. I don't care if you've got a new C-suite executive. I can't do anything with that information because I write for technology desks, or even on the business desk, I'm writing about business technology for business, and they don't care about seed funding either, and they don't care how much you've got, or you've hired some new C-suite guy. So therefore, why are you not telling me about your cool technology and why it's cool? Why are you wasting my time with irrelevant pitches? Also, if you Google me, you can find out what my interests are. My pet peeve with PRs is when they don't bother. I've got it on my LinkedIn, every single area I cover, all 13 topics. It's also on my personal website, which is linked to my Twitter. So if you don't know who I am, you didn't spend 5 minutes on the internet looking.
Rena.
Oof, there are so many bad pitches. The ones that irritate me the most are probably the ones, remarkably, from companies that we just wrote about. That often happens so many times, or we just featured a company just like them. If I just wrote about a certain sector, a very specific niche company, I'm probably not going to write about its competitor tomorrow. It's already done. You missed the boat. Unless you're doing something revolutionary, or you're better than them, or you got funding from someone amazing, it's just not going to happen. And then I'd say my third biggest pet peeve are publicists who use buzzwords thinking that we're that dumb to fall for them. I get remarkable pitches that you wouldn't believe, like, daffodils are the new wellness trend. Like, they obviously love this word wellness and they throw it into everything. This happens all the time. I don't even read something that has the word disruptive in it because I know it probably isn't. A real publicist knows that there are certain terms that are just hogwash to us at this point. And I will say, and I believe you said this earlier, we mostly check the subject line. That's really important. I always tell publicists, your subject line should be what kind of is headline for a newspaper. That's what's going to grab people. And also think in terms of the journalist. I ultimately have to pitch this to my editor. What's going to grab them? What would grab a reader? And that's what you have to put in there. So many times people just bog it down with all these details. Get to the point. How are you going to help people? How is this going to change the industry? What is this going to do for everyone?
Frederick.
Hi, Fred, comma, which is not my name. I just read this great article by you, colon, and then a link to some story that I wrote yesterday that took me 5 minutes, which was not a great article, I know that, it was just a news piece. I would like to tell you about this revolutionary new hairdryer, connected hairdryer, that will change the world. Can you place that on TechCrunch, and how much do I have to pay for that? Best, Frederick. And then a follow-up within an hour, and a call within 2 hours, and then a follow-up call within 3 hours. That's the worst, and I get those every day.
That's impressive.
And it's there's a handbook somewhere that says you should tell the journalist that you just read an article by them because you followed them and you know what they care about. And people do that, but they don't understand what we do. So those are the worst.
Now, we spoke before about news hooks, that it would be nice, it's good to have a news hook in a story, but sometimes, what's the timing on that for you? I got a pitch this week inviting me to a conference, asking me if I'd like to come to this conference. It sounded like a pretty interesting conference, but my reply was, at 1 day's notice, no. Okay? What kind of timing should people give you for a news event that they actually want you to attend or cover or to include in your story?
A news event or a pitch for a story?
A news event. If people are trying to pitch you a news event, they've got a conference or they've got a launch.
As much time as possible. Generally, I feel like as much time as they can give as possible. We're all professionals. We can abide by an embargo if that's the case. But oftentimes, I know in my case, traveling for a story, going to a conference, so we'd like to schedule it in. So as much time as you can get. I, like you, sometimes get last-minute pitches, and I feel like it does more damage in the long run. It makes me resent the person who sent it to me, that they have such little regard for my time that it makes me not want to consider them moving forward. And sort of like you were saying about the crazy emails that you get, I get those too. I think sometimes publicists think that they could just, throw spaghetti at the wall and one time it'll land. They don't realize that the more they irritate us, the more we're not going to want to interact with them in the future.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to thank all our companies for presenting. I'd like to thank our panel. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of the day.